Hi, this is Pastor Greg, coming to you maybe not live, but alive. Alive with hope and anticipation of all the opportunities that God has for us to be God's people in the world. This week's opportunity comes to us from the 14th chapter of Matthew, where we hear that wonderful story, the miracle of Jesus feeding 5,000 people with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Reminded me of one of my very first Sundays as a pastor years ago. I'd come to the church and things were all set. The altar guild had set things up for worship, and I didn't even check. I just assumed things were ready. And I got in the middle of the communion service and realized there was only just a handful of communion wafers on the paten. And there was a whole congregation full of people. I didn't really know what to do. I thought, well, can I just take one of these little wafers, break it in half, break it in 4s? Well, that wouldn't even quite do it. Well, obviously, things went just fine. The altar guild saw what was going on, and they came to the rescue, and things were just fine. Things were just fine. But that isn't what it's all about. The actual meal that those 5,000 people received that day, as big of a miracle as it was, and as important as it was to their physical bodies to eat that day, the bigger picture is Jesus' presence with them. And the same is true for our communion. We call it a meal, and indeed it is. But this little piece of bread and the little sip of wine that we receive doesn't physically fill us up. But it fills us up with Jesus, with His love, His grace, His mercy, His presence with us. That's what that bigger miracle is all about. That God loves us so much that God became one of us in Jesus and came to be with us to save us and now to stay with us. That is what that miracle is all about. Thanks be to God that we are fed by Jesus here with this precious gift of communion, but even more with His constant presence.